All right, third and final hour of the Stig Show on a Tuesday. And last week, we introduced you to a new segment that we're going to do every Tuesday night from 5 until about 6 o'clock with Jeff Apodaca, the former candidate for governor in the state of New Mexico. And we're calling it Turnaround Tuesdays. He's calling it Turnaround Tuesdays.
Well, that's what we called it all through the
Yeah, I was going to say you called it. That's what you called it. So you can check us out right now, Facebook Live, New Mexico Democrats for Democracy, and we're going to talk about some of the issues that are going on. But before we do that, well, Jeff's dad made a little bit of news this week, and we're going to tell you about that in 1 minute on the Stig Show on News Radio KKOB. All right, welcome back to the show. Scott Stigler, Brandon Vogt, and Jeff Apodaca joining us here in studio. Again, New Mexico Democrats for Democracy on Facebook Live right now. If you want to see my power red shirt.
We were making fun, Brandon. I've noticed this is week 2, and you got the power shirt.
I got the power
Looking
red shirt.
Good.
It worked.
And everybody at the station telling me you're dressing up now since we're Facebook Live.
Well, that's true.
No grease stains on that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I got it pressed. All right, so Jeff joins us here, and again, we're going to be talking about some of the issues as we count down to Election Day. We'll be here every Tuesday and talking to Jeff. But your dad made a little news this week.
My dad made some news. If people read his op-ed in the Albuquerque Journal, I think the op-ed speaks for itself. He's been very frustrated. Him and I, look, and you asked me before we went on the show, did I know about it? Clearly, he brought this to my attention about a week ago. He had drafted a 16-word document that he was actually
16 words?
16-word document.
Man, gets right to the point.
I think so. And then I think some of his, he belongs to a couple of social groups, business folks, political folks. And I think the whole group is so frustrated up in Santa Fe on some of the divisiveness that they've seen between the parties that a lot of the conversation, specifically in that older generation, is, we governed between both sides. We governed together. When I was a child, my dad and I talked about it the other day. When I was a child, there were Republican families we actually hung out with. We went on ski trips together. We were all friends. Today, Republican and Democrats don't even talk. So my father decided to write an op-ed, and in that op-ed, my father's his own person. In that op-ed, he decided that after speaking to everybody, recommended he speak to both candidates. And I believe, according to his words, Michelle never reached out to him, and Pearce had. And so after a conversation, and I don't know how long that conversation was, but after a conversation and talking about topics, according to my father's op-ed, he thinks that Pearce is the person that probably needs to run our state with the divisiveness we have between both parties.
Right. So your father, a Democrat, longtime Democrat, governor of this state from 1975 to 1979, has endorsed the Republican candidate for governor. Does that surprise you?
It did. It actually did. Well, kind of. It didn't surprise me to a point when he called me and said, look, his group and some of his generation, specifically Democrat generation, are very frustrated. I know my generation is very frustrated between the divide between the party. We've talked about it. And so I think he finally felt like it had to be said. It had to be said that he's not happy the way the Democratic Party's going. He thinks it's going too far to the left, in his words. And he's always been a very pro-business, moderate Democrat as he governed. But his biggest challenge, my father spent 40 years of his political career, business career, supporting minorities and helping minorities, specifically the Latino community. Not only when he was governor, he appointed people into higher authority, but he also helped Hispanics across the country in corporate America. And what he's really been frustrated about, what he told me and we talked about, that he's been very frustrated at the Democratic political party and how they basically have pushed the moderates and the Democrat and the Hispanic community away from the core Democratic Party. And he's been frustrated about it. And so I think he finally just, when he was encouraged to talk to different candidates, I think the op-ed speaks for itself.
All right. One of the things that he is now, or maybe even partly you, are being criticized for is that this became personal. You have had your problems with Michelle Lujan Grisham. You haven't seen eye to eye. It was a fairly contentious primary, debates. Debates during the primary were pretty contentious. Is there anything here about maybe your father just trying to help his son?
No, I don't think so. I don't see how this helps me. It definitely doesn't help me with the Democratic Party. I think, I ran a campaign that basically said, we're tired of the corruption. We're tired of the establishment. It's time that we all start working together. Clearly, less than 27%, I think it was, of the turnout. People are not engaging. The Latino community is not engaging. And I think my father was just frustrated about that. I think that's where it's kind of at right now.
He described Steve Pearce as a moderate.
No, I don't think so. I don't
no?
think so. No, what he said was, and if you read his op-ed, because some of the Democrats and some of the establishments now saying, oh, now Governor Apodaca is comparing Steve Pearce as a JFK moderate. That's not what he said, and that's not what I took from the op-ed. What the op-ed said was that he's a JFK moderate, and that when he sat and talked to Pearce and never heard from Grisham, that he felt that Pearce, they saw eye to eye on some of the policies. Now, when my father talks, he's talking about jobs and opportunities for Hispanic communities, our schools. My father was a school teacher before he became governor, right? And so when you talk about those issues, which are a lot of the issues that we talk about that I grew up in. So no, I don't think my father's calling Steve Pearce a moderate. I think what my father said in his op-ed, and then I talked to him about it, was that he thinks we need somebody that's going to reach across party lines and not create a bigger diversity or a division between the parties. And so I don't think that article. I don't think that article said that at all. I think what the article said was both parties have pushed themselves so far to the right and so far to the left that Stig, there's 65-70% of New Mexicans stuck in the middle that are upset at both parties, and we know those are and what he's saying is those are the people that need to rise up and speak out, and don't worry about the parties. Let's worry about the candidates.
I think this is what Democrats are glomming onto. He said he reminded me of moderate Democrats, speaking of Pearce, and Republicans of the past I worked with for the betterment of New Mexico.
I don't really know what happened in that conversation. So I wasn't there. I didn't have, so I don't know exactly what they talked about. I know they talked about the issues and the Hispanic community. And again, I'm just going off what he talked to me about. And I think he's just frustrated. I do not believe that op-ed is calling Steve Pearce a moderate. What he's saying is that he felt like Steve Pearce could work, is willing to work across party lines with Democrats, Republicans, and independents, libertarians across the board.
All right. You mentioned something that I think is interesting for anyone, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whatever. You see corruption within the party favoring Michelle Lujan Grisham or an established candidate. Elaborate. Tell me what you're talking about.
Well, what I think you're talking about is yes, during the delegate process, the election of delegates during the primary process, not just me, candidates up and down the ballot, and I think you saw this in the press, and I think the Journal did something. Some of the other gubernatorial candidates had a press conference that I attended, talking about how we saw the party favoring certain candidates during the delegation process of electing delegates for that. We know for a fact, it was in the press, that we found 9 fractions of the party in Santa Fe alone in wards fixing ballots or doing things that were against the rules to make sure Michelle got her delegates elected. Now, that's old news, and I don't want to go back to that. But we know that the party has been pushed so far that they're protecting. We saw it. We lived it. We saw it. So, again, we're not doing this talk show, and we're not out there pounding the pavement talking about issues because I'm sour grades or I'm upset. Look, I lost the election, right? Let's be very frank. I lost the election. The Democrats that showed up to vote, all 27% of them, decided Michelle did a better job getting her people out to vote. God bless her. Now it's the general election. And what we want to make sure is New Mexico Democrats for Democracy and ourselves, we want to make sure is that New Mexicans are being represented. And we have to stop thinking about the parties because the parties and the labeling has just driven us to 50th. And so so that's really what this is. And I think going back to my dad's op-ed, the endorsement, you got to look up sometimes, you may not have been around, but you got to look at sometimes my dad's history. Sometimes my father shoots out flares to warn people about what he sees coming. My father has seen politics at the national level, at the local level. He is seeing the Democratic, me and him have talked. We do not recognize the Democratic Party today that we saw in the past. And it's literally leaving people behind. And his whole career, his whole life, is bringing opportunities to Hispanics and the Hispanic community. He came from a very poor Hispanic community in Las Cruces, was a football player, a coach, got into insurance, and then became governor. But he made sure opportunities were there for Hispanics across the board. He's seeing the Hispanics left behind, and I think that's what his op-ed was more about than anything else.
Seems like this was more of a bomb than a flare.
It was a big
bomb.
And I'm going to tell people, because on social media they're saying Jeff put him up to it. It's because of Jeff. Look, he brought it to me. He said, "This is what I'm going to do." My parents, my mom and dad, brought us up to basically be our own people. I think I said, "Dad, I could have probably killed it, be very frank and honest, but my father taught us to here's the number one thing I'm hearing, and my father's hearing. Here's the number one thing. It had to be said. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Governor, for standing up and saying it has to be said. It's time that both parties need to wake up and start thinking about New Mexico and not about the party."
All right, we're going to take your calls on this, and then we're going to get to education as well. Jeff Apodaca is our in-studio guest. We're going to ask him when we come back, though, is he going to make an endorsement? All right, Jeff Apodaca is our in-studio guest. Are you going to make an endorsement before this thing's over?
I am not. I'm not endorsing Steve Pearce. I've made that very clear. And I think, I have no intention to. And now that my relationship is here talking about policies and my relationship with the New Mexico Democrats for Democracy, I think it's against our policy to endorse anybody. So what I'm going to push is policies and solutions and ideas and debate. Our goal is to bring Republicans and Democrats together. Hopefully, after 12 weeks, Stig, you and I can bring people together and solve people's ideas.
All right, let's get in a couple of calls here before we get to some of those other topics. James, you're on with Jeff Apodaca. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my call. Look, Jeff, I ran into your wife while she was putting up signs for you when you were running. And, it sounded like you were politicking like a conservative. You were talking about conservative issues. But I told your wife, I said, you know what? I want you guys to get on 770, which you are now. And because I told her that what the Democrat Party told you, you get in line. You just do exactly as we tell you, and they put Michelle in there. Because you just finished talking about how corrupt it is. Well, you saw it with the Democrat Party with Hillary and Bernie Sanders in the national, and it also works the same way here. So that's how she got in there. Now, I want you to endorse Steve Pearce because you're getting in line, and I believe you're probably going to pull the lever for the Democrat Party. But the Democrat Party has never been good for the state of New Mexico for I don't know how many years. And there's so many years I can't even count them. But the Democrats are not willing to come together. The Republicans are willing to go to the table, but the Democrats do not want to hear what the conservatives have to say. So I see what you're trying to do here, but the solution for you and your daddy is that you guys come over and change the end of your party affiliation to an R. That way you can get on, with what you were politicking on. You kind of were politicking like a conservative.
There you go.
But the Democrats are not going to go that way.
All right, James. All right. Hold your thought. I got to get to a break here, and then we're going to come back. We'll get Jeff to respond to that and more of your phone calls when the Stig Show continues on News Radio KQB.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Looks like we got some good people. Thanks for some of the questions. We'll try and get to some of your questions about economic and jobs. Today, we're actually going to be talking about education. So ask Stig and I some questions about education and what the candidates think about that after this segment. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in.
New Mexico's Talk Leader. 94.5 FM and AM 770 News Radio KKOB.
All right, we're going to talk education here momentarily with Jeff Apodaca. Turnaround Tuesdays is what he called it during the campaign. And we caught a lot of attention this week. And his father, Jerry Apodaca, the former governor of New Mexico, caught a lot of attention with his endorsement, Jerry's endorsement of Steve Pearce, the Republican in this race, not Michelle Lujan Grisham. Mike, you're on.
We got to go back.
Yeah, before we do that, Mike, hang on the line here just a second. Let me respond to the other caller.
So James, thanks so much. James asked about, I was politicking and he was out putting signs.
Become a Republican.
Yeah, and look, I'm a Democrat, but it's funny where during the campaign, my platform, Stig, has not changed from day one. And in fact, we've sent other candidates up and down the ballot, basically, take our ideas, and that's fine. But my platform has not changed. There were progressives that liked our platform. They wanted me to be the progressive candidate. There were moderates that liked our platform. There were Republicans, independents, libertarians that liked our platform. That was my point. Our platform is for New Mexico. It's not for the parties. And so I wouldn't get in line, but my point is we have to continue fighting for New Mexico, and that's what we're doing. So, James, I really appreciate it. I'm not a Republican. There are some things I don't agree with you, Stig. You and I talked about.
Yep.
And so, but my platform, so now I'm being attacked right now because I'm sitting there debating issues and talking about issues. I'm trying to bring people together. And in reality, I told some of the progressives on social media yesterday, I'm going on answering their questions. My platform hasn't changed. You supported me when I was talking to the Democrats. Why aren't you supporting our policies if I can convince the Republicans and the conservatives, the libertarians, to do the same thing? Isn't that what's best for New Mexico?
I got to read from Joe Monahan's blog here.
I didn't
It
see
says Jeff Apodaca is back to hugging conservatives, or at least hanging out with them. He's going to do a weekly broadcast to discuss the views of governor candidates on conservative radio talker, KQB Radio. So we need to take a break.
Let me respond to that.
We need to take a break here.
There's too many breaks, man, but I know you got to pay the bills.
Yeah, we need to take a break here, but while we're gone, I'm going to give Jeff a hug. That's what he said we're doing. I might as well have a little bromance here. Yeah.
You want me to get to traffic?
Yeah. Let's bromance some traffic, Bobby.
Turnaround Tuesdays for the state of New Mexico continues on the Stig Show on News Radio KQB. You wanted to comment about hugging conservatives?
No, we were just kind of laughing because there has been some Democrats that have come up to me and said, Jeff, we really like you. We like your platform, but we can't support you as governor because you're too friendly with the Republicans. I said, well, tell me who they were. There's 5 guys. So tell me who they were. Well, I started laughing. 2 of the 5 were Democrats. It's like just because we're business people doesn't mean we're always Republicans. And so, and again, we talked about it at commercial time. If we had more Democrats and Republicans show up here, maybe have a couple of drinks and talk about the issues, we could solve some of the problems.
All right, we'll get to education here just momentarily. Mike, you're on with Jeff Apodaca. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a couple of questions for Jeff. Pertaining to his father, how can he endorse a person that in his political congressional record votes high 90% of the time with Republicans? I think in 2016 he voted 7% of the time with Democrats. That doesn't show him reaching across the aisle. Question number 2, in this political climate that we're in right now, how do you think that being kumbaya, by being friendly with the people across the aisle, the Republicans, that guy that you're talking to right now, Stigler, is gonna be friends with you? Is gonna agree with some of the things you know? It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen, Jeff. That's very naive, especially in light of the political climate right now. Thank you for not cutting me off.
All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike. And Mike, I have to disagree with you. This is exactly the time we need to get together and sit here and talk about the issues and sit here and talk and discuss these issues. This is the problem. Our climate has gotten so divided that we can't govern. We can't get things done. And then we're in 50th. So let's put it this way, folks. It ain't working. We're 50th in education. We're 50th in job creation. It ain't working. So by me continuously pushing our agenda and continuously pushing and talking and sitting with libertarians, Republicans, and Democrats, Mike, I disagree with you. I think this is specifically the time we need to all come together. In the good old days, I'm not saying we're there anymore, but in the good old days, they used to sit in that bull ring across from the Capitol and get drunk and cut deals, and the state functioned. Today, it's so divided, they don't even talk to each other. And look, I'll tell you right now, Mike, I talk to the Republican legislators. Our own Republican governor gets pissed off at them and won't talk to them. So it's like everybody's like not talking to everybody. And I'm hoping over the next 12 weeks, we can sit here and talk. And Stig, you and I may not always agree, but we can laugh and be friends. We don't always have to agree on everything. But if we maybe go out, and Mike, if we all go out and have a couple of drinks or maybe go skiing or go hang out with each other, maybe we can find common ground on the important things that are going to fix the state.
We're at least going to hug. That's what I was told that we're doing.
We'll take a picture and post it on Facebook.
We're going to hug. All right, we're going to come back and talk with Jeff Apodaca about education, and we'll do that in the next segment on News Radio KQB.
Hey, Kay. Hi, Claudette. Thanks for joining us today. Hi, everybody. Ask us some questions on education. We're going to start talking about education now and some of the things that we're talking about to help improve education. Thanks for joining us today.
Brandon Vogt is next at 6 on New Mexico's First Choice when news breaks. 94.5 FM and AM 770 News Radio KKOB.
All right, Stig and Jeff Apodaca on News Radio KKOB. So talking about education, and I had this conversation yesterday. Jeff, I hate to be the Debbie Downer in this conversation, but I think we are so entrenched in a culture of not caring about education in the state. I don't know if we're ever going to climb out of it.
Well, I think part of it is our culture has now gone that we spend more money at the top than we do in the classroom versus 40 years ago. 40 years ago, we used to spend 6 to 7% more money in the classroom than we do up at the top. Now, going back to my dad restructured the state of New Mexico into the cabinet positions. The one position that was never a cabinet position was education. And he, coming from a teacher, believed that education is done from the community up, not top down. And that's what we talked about on the campaign. And so we have found about 8%, $225 million. So 8% of the public education department, we have found that goes to park tests or goes to consultants or goes up in administration. As governor, we were proposing that we'd move that money back down into the classroom. Now, I've talked to Grisham about it. I've talked to Pearce about it. They both agree that we got to get more money into the classroom, so that's great. In fact, today on Facebook and our blog, we actually graded both gubernatorial candidates, and we gave them both A's on this because they're both talking about early education. We don't need to spend more money. We just need to reallocate more money back into the classroom and empower our teachers, our principals, and our superintendents from the bottom up, from the community up.
Here's my problem. We spend somewhere in the 30s in the rankings, in the state rankings, somewhere in the 30s, low 30s to mid 30s.
I think between 28 and 30.
Okay, sorry. So we're there in spending. We're next to last or dead last in results.
Well, again, what we're doing is 50% of our kids, look, let's be very realistic. 95% of our children in New Mexico are going to be educated in our public school systems. And we're taking resources and dollars out of the classrooms, out of those communities. And look, Stig, 52% of our people live on some type of government assistance. Over 25% of New Mexicans live in poverty. So you have to educate and help kids and those families in those other areas. So we're pushing for not only early child education, but early family intervention, early family programs, in-home programs, specifically within the Latino community. In the last 2 years, 85% of the kids that were born in our state, 85% were Hispanic or Native American. So if we don't start putting resources into community outreach programs, and I'm not saying start new programs, there are tons of nonprofits that have very strong success rates, but they don't have the funding. So let's get those fundings back in the community. Let's allow the communities to basically start educating their children from the bottom up. Then in middle school and high schools, we have cut so many we call pathways. We've cut so many pathways away from our children in the trade skills, in the arts, films, television, music. That's why our kids are dropping out of school. And so we're pushing both gubernatorial candidates and our U.S. senators and U.S. senator candidates to say, look, we need to put more funding into trade skills, into film and television, into after-school programs to keep our kids engaged. We know for a fact when you do those programs, you get a 14 to 16% return on job creation, on people staying out of poverty, people staying out of going into prisons. Those are the things that we're pushing and we're talking about.
In El Paso, Texas, it's a city that's not that different than New Mexico. Demographic makeup, those kinds of things. They have a graduation rate in 2 of their high school districts that's 90%. Albuquerque Public Schools is 67%. What the heck is the difference?
Again, if you look at Carlsbad, you look at Farmington, you look at Anthony, New Mexico, and Anthony, Texas, when you start looking at those, what's going on in those communities, they're putting more dollars, more resources, paying teachers more money in those communities. So I want you to go look at Artesia, Carlsbad, Lovington, Farmington. Even Farmington has taken textbooks out of the classroom and put tablets into the classroom, they're saving money that way, but the kids are more engaged. We have coding. My wife has started Open Source Kids at our school, and it's a nonprofit with another gentleman and a couple other moms. It's a nonprofit teaching kids coding and robotics in elementary school. Now, there's some other nonprofits trying to do it, but my point is my nieces live in California. They're now 12 and 13. They've been doing coding since they were 5 in their public schools. These are jobs of not the future. Those are jobs of today. So if we're not teaching our kids those, that's what we're talking about. And we're going to continue pushing our gubernatorial candidates for that. That's where the money needs to go. At the same time, we need to educate our teachers how to educate kids that live in poverty communities, and we have to recruit more teachers and more educators from those communities that know exactly how we need to educate our teachers.
Do we do too much teaching to the test?
I do, absolutely. I see it now with my kids. I have twin boys that are 10. They're in 4th grade. They freaked out last year in 3rd grade about the PARCC test. I do think we're spending more time, and I talked to too many teachers out there, and both gubernatorial candidates, or we're going back to what we talked about, both gubernatorial candidates have said they're going to get rid of the PARCC test. Everybody agrees with an evaluation, right? The teachers, the principals, the superintendents, the governor, everybody agrees with that. So let's work out an evaluation that we can be fair to our teachers, but we need to recruit more teachers. We're short 300 teachers in APS this year. We have to change that.
All right, I want to talk about accountability and how you keep teachers accountable without burdening them too much. We'll do that when we continue with Jeff Apodaca. Back in 1 minute. All right, I don't mind the teacher evaluation. I don't mind the grades for the schools, but I do think the teacher evaluation is a little messed up in that student attendance, those kinds of things are held against a teacher. And if we're truly teaching to the test and kids don't like to take the test, then teachers' grades are going to suffer.
Wait, we're not allowed to agree because Mike said we're never going to agree.
Yeah.
Actually,
we had to hug. So.
I agree with that 100%, Stick. Teachers are teaching to the test. None of the teachers like it. It's taking almost 6 weeks out of the teaching school year, according to the teachers and the educators. So, we believe in that across the board. And then I know we want to take a question. Claudette from Facebook Live, she said, I'm a retired teacher. I'd like to help out. How do we get more teachers back involved? We talked about it at commercial. There's over 300. We're short 300 teachers just in Albuquerque. I've seen as high as 800 teachers across the state. One of our proposals is, the teachers that have retired. We have great teachers out there that have retired. How do we get them back? We might let them double dip, get their retirement plus pay. We need to get educated, good quality teachers back. We also need to recruit our high school, New Mexico high school and New Mexico college kids to be teachers and stay right here. And we have to pay our teachers more. So we've been pushing a new pay scale, almost $10,000 to $15,000 more per level. Both gubernatorial candidates have agreed to it. And Michelle has her plan. Pearce has her plan, has his plan. At the same time, one thing that we're disappointed at that we haven't got the gubernatorial candidates to agree on is we want to push 3% annual raises, not only for teachers, but all the support staff. You start talking about the support staff. Everybody talks about teachers. You forget about the support staff that is as important than anybody else. They haven't had raises almost 10 to 14 years.
Okay, how are we going to pay for it?
We got to create jobs. Our job growth, our investment growth. Next week, we're going to talk about the $24 billion that we invest into Oklahoma, Texas. We start investing 5% of that and create jobs. That's job growth. That's tax revenue. Now, I know some of my progressive friends didn't like me on the campaign trail because I wouldn't talk about going away from fracking. 40% of our economy is oil and gas. 40%. And until we diversify, until we start investing more into renewables and creating more jobs, according to what we're tracing right now, we're pacing right now, is we're looking at probably $900 million of surpluses next year from oil and gas. Now, I know some of my progressive friends want us to move away from fracking and oil and gas. We want to invest and diversify the economy, and we're going to push our gubernatorial candidates that way. But we have to create more jobs, and that's how we do it. And that's my point is we've lost over $600 million in tax revenue in the last 10 years because of job cuts or streamlining taxes. I'm not saying we're against that, but we need to create jobs. We've lost over 146,000 jobs in the last 10 years. We've got to create jobs. By investing back into New Mexico, keeping small business here, helping small businesses grow, we can do it.
Are unions keeping bad teachers in classrooms?
No, I don't think so. I think unions have an important. I think unions have an important situation. They're important to the education. Half the teachers in our state are non-union. So I'm not going to worry about what the unions are thinking or what the unions are fighting. I'm thinking, look, if we empower our teachers, our principals, and our superintendents, let me tell you something. Our kids go to an elementary school. I love our principal. I love our superintendent. I mean, our superintendent, principal, and vice principal. I can tell you they know exactly who the good teachers are and who the bad teachers are. We just need to empower them to let them make those decisions. And then we need to give the tools to make sure our teachers are doing a better job.
I had a legislator once tell me NEA stands for never enough already.
Well, again, I'm not going to get into the union. I'm a union supporter, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think unions do bad things. I think unions do a lot of good things. Let's make sure I'm focused on make sure that we get money and resources into our teachers, into our communities, into our schools to give them the resources.
I would like to see them at least let the public education department have some input, because they travel the entire state and they know what's going on in other areas. The areas of success that you talked about, they're kind of ignoring, I think.
Well, but those areas are being controlled by who? Teachers, principals, and superintendents.
Yeah, well,
that's what the unions don't have much to do about that. Our PED, Public Education Department, has taken the authority away from the local communities. We actually have to change that, and I'm going to push both gubernatorial candidates for that because we have to change that. That's how we fix it.
All right, we'll talk to you next week.
Talk to you next week. I think we're talking about $24 billion.
Yep, $24 billion. Got it in my couch cushions. Back in a minute.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We got 30 seconds before back live on the air. Join us next week. We're going to talk about our $24 billion in investing back into New Mexico. Any questions we didn't answer on Facebook, I'll try and get to them by tomorrow. God bless you guys. Thanks for tuning in.